The first thing that struck me was the smell. Sharp, metallic, like the ink on a freshly signed check. It had soaked into the papers scattered across the guest room carpet, the room where my brother had been staying. I bent down and picked one up. An ATM withdrawal receipt. With my signature on it. Only it wasn't my signature. The numbers blurred in front of my eyes as I read the amount. $20,000. Under it lay another receipt. This one for $35,000. My throat tightened as I gathered them with trembling hands. The room was completely empty. The suitcase I'd seen in the corner the night before was gone. Drawers hung open, yanked out carelessly. No clothes inside. Even the picture frames I'd left on the dresser, photos of the kids at Cannon Beach with our parents smiling in the background, were empty. The glass fronts reflected the morning light, but behind them, there was nothing. On the pillow, I found a note, written in my brother's hurried but still recognizable handwriting. "I'm sorry, Selena. Cassandra says we need a fresh start. Don't look for us." I sank onto the edge of the bed. The mattress still held the imprint of his sleep. Darian was 41 years old, but he had vanished like a teenager sneaking out after curfew. Only he hadn't taken a watch or some pocket money. He'd taken almost everything. I pressed the forged receipts to my chest, trying to steady my breathing. This wasn't petty theft. This was betrayal, carved out with my name in ink I had never touched. From downstairs came the light, quick patter of footsteps, not quite an adult's. My son, Roan, was awake. In a few seconds, he would see this whole disaster. "Mom." His voice came from the doorway. He stood there in a rumpled t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep. His eyes moved across the paper chaos on my lap, the empty drawers behind me. What happened? I opened my mouth, but the words got stuck. How do you tell a 12-year-old boy that his uncle stole everything? I stammered, unable to find an answer. But Roan stepped into the room before I could speak. He knelt beside me, peering at the slip in my hands. I expected tears, panic. Instead, a strange calm spread across his face. He smiled. "Mom, don't worry. I already fixed it." I stared at him. "What do you mean, fixed it?" Roan pulled a phone from his pocket. Not his old, scratched one, but a thin black device I'd never seen before. A couple of quick swipes of his finger, and he showed me a profile photo in some database I didn't even know existed. Under the picture was the name Denise Voss. Warrants in 3 states. Charges ranging from fraud to assault. "That's Cassandra," Roan said calmly. "Your brother's girlfriend. She's not who she says she is." My mouth went dry. "How could you?" I started. "I was watching him," Roan interrupted. His voice was frighteningly adult. He thought his late-night calls were a secret. I tracked his phone, copied the messages. When I realized her name was fake, I started digging deeper. "Public records, they're all open, Mom. You just need to know where to look." I gripped the edge of the bed, trying to hold on. My son, who still scattered Legos around the living room, was talking like a real private investigator. His small fingers had been scrolling through documents, arrest records, addresses. He looked up at me with a certainty I couldn't match. "It's under control. Uncle Darian isn't nearly as smart as he thinks." Relief, intertwined with anxiety, flared in me. I didn't get a chance to answer. A sharp knock echoed from the first floor. Another one, louder, more insistent. I forced myself to stand and go downstairs. Roan followed, almost close enough to be touching me. Through the glass insert in the door, I saw 2 officers standing on the porch. Their uniforms looked impeccable against the gray, overcast Portland morning. "Mrs. Marla?" the taller one asked when I opened the door. His voice was official, but not unkind. "I'm Detective Halverson. This is Officer Diaz. May we come in?" My stomach cramped. I stepped back, inviting them into the living room. Roan settled into an armchair, his small hands neatly folded on his knees. Halverson pulled a folder from under his arm and opened it on the coffee table. "We got a tip this morning. Your brother, Darian Marla, was picked up at a gas station off Highway 5, about 40 miles south," Halverson said. "He was with a woman named Denise Voss." The name landed like a stone. I shot a quick look at Roan. His expression didn't change. Diaz slid some photos toward me. "Grainy surveillance footage. Darian withdrawing money from ATMs. Denise next to him. Bank statements with my forged signature. Printouts of messages where they discussed the escape. There was so much evidence. I pressed my palm to my mouth. My God, I breathed. The words were true in their shock, if not in surprise. Halverson's voice softened. We managed to recover most of the funds. We need you to confirm that the withdrawals weren't authorized, but it looks like you'll get the bulk of your money back. I nodded hastily, pretending to read the papers, though my head was buzzing. That tip they mentioned wasn't anonymous at all. It was Roan. My 12-year-old son had given the authorities everything they needed. I forced my voice to be steady. I didn't know he was capable of this. I would never have thought. We understand, Halverson said, closing the folder. Someone was clearly looking out for you. Roan shifted slightly in his chair, and the corner of his mouth twitched with the barest hint of a smile. Before I could say anything, the phone on the end table rang, shrilly cutting the silence. I grabbed it, my hand shaking. Hello. In response, a burst of static. Then Darian's voice. Hoarse, desperate. Selena, it's me. Don't hang up, please. I swallowed. Where are you? County jail. They picked us up. Me and Denise. But listen, this wasn't an accident. I was set up. Someone close. They knew everything. Darian's voice cracked. Our route, the withdrawals, even the backup phone. Who else could have known that? Who? I closed my eyes, staring at the evidence folder still lying on the coffee table. My son sat a few feet away, quiet as a shadow, his gaze fixed on me. Darian, I forced out. You made your choice. You forged my name. You stole from me. I was going to pay it back, he interrupted hastily, the words tripping over each other. She said it was an investment. A chance to finally make things right. But someone wanted me to fall. Cassandra is dangerous, but this is bigger than just her. My throat tightened. Everything in me screamed to ask, to find out exactly what he meant. But Roan shifted in his chair, tilting his head slightly, watching me intently. I don't know anything, I said finally. My voice came out thin but firm. Now you have to face the consequences. A long pause, then a heavy sigh on the line. You don't understand. They're playing games with us. Be careful. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the receiver. My palm was slick with sweat. Silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock. Roan leaned back in his chair, crossing his legs in a gesture too old for his years. Maybe it was her who betrayed him, he said, almost lightly. Criminals devour each other. The simplicity of the suggestion should have comforted me, but instead, it settled inside me, heavy and cold as lead, as the daylight slid across the floorboards. That evening, after the police had left and the house had become unbearably quiet, I found Roan in the kitchen. He was sitting at the table with an open notebook in front of him. His pen moved across the page confidently, without pausing. His brow was furrowed in concentration. He didn't notice me lingering in the doorway. Homework? I asked, trying to sound casual. He shook his head without looking up. A letter for Uncle Darian. I think it might help him. I wanted to tell him not to waste his energy, that Darian didn't deserve a single word, but Roan's voice held a calm, firm intention. I left him, though an unpleasant chill ran down my spine. Later. After he'd gone upstairs, I noticed a neatly folded sheet of paper on the kitchen counter, addressed to Uncle on the front. My mind told me not to touch it, but my hands unfolded the page on their own. The handwriting was careful, almost adult, and the words were sharper than I could have anticipated. Dear Uncle Darian, I forgive you for stealing from us. I forgive you for choosing a criminal over your family. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Jails have rules. You never liked rules, but maybe they'll finally teach you. That's your place, because out here, you only hurt the people who love you. If you ever try to hurt Mom or Grandma again, if you even think about taking something from us, I'll finish what you started. You put the noose around your own neck when you forged her signature. I'll just make sure it tightens all the way. I lowered the letter, my hands trembling. These lines couldn't belong to a 12-year-old boy. They were written by someone who understood how to wound, how to absolve. Forgiveness concealing a threat. Mercy wrapped in a blade. Awe-filled terror and cold fear battled in my chest. This was my son, my sweet boy who still asked for an extra blanket at night. And yet, he was the one constructing sentences as if he'd studied cruelty for years. I carefully refolded the letter, put it back in its place, and pressed my palms to the kitchen counter, trying to compose myself. Upstairs, a door clicked shut. Roan had closed himself in his room, and in the ensuing silence, another knock sounded at the front door, this time heavier, more insistent. The thuds came at the exact moment I was placing the letter back on the counter. I jumped, gripping the edge of the sink to steady myself. Opening the door, I saw a woman in a severe navy blue blazer. She introduced herself briefly and efficiently. "Kelly Walsh, Child Protective Services. May I come in?" My mouth went dry. "Of course," I forced out, stepping aside. She held a folder and a notepad. Her smile was polite but sharp, like a blade. "We received a report regarding concern for your son's well-being. Following your brother's recent arrest, we are required to conduct a check. It's standard procedure." I glanced at the stairs. Roan was already there. He came down slowly, polite as ever, and extended his hand with a composed confidence that made him seem older than his years. "Good afternoon, ma'am." Kelly looked impressed. "And so polite. That's nice to see." She asked to see his room. I tensed internally, but Roan opened the door with a genuine gesture of invitation. Inside, everything was immaculate. Bed made, books sorted by subject, clothes neatly folded in drawers. On his desk, a closed laptop, next to it a row of perfectly sharpened pencils. Kelly made notes and nodded. "Impeccable. You have a lot to be proud of, Mrs. Marla." Roan answered her questions with polished ease about school, friends, how he was coping with his uncle's arrest. His words were balanced. Not a hint of defensiveness, no rehearsed lines, just enough detail to sound natural. "Sometimes I feel sad," he admitted quietly. "But Mom always makes sure I'm okay." Kelly's face softened. "That's a very healthy way to express that," she noted. By the end of the visit, she was practically glowing. "Your son is one of the most well-adjusted children I've encountered in similar circumstances. I'll be filing a positive report. Further checks will likely not be necessary." I smiled stiffly, thanked her, and saw her to the door. As soon as the lock clicked, Roan turned to me with a slight, satisfied smile. "Easy," he said, and headed to the kitchen as if nothing had happened. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding, Kelly's praise still ringing in my ears. Outside, the world saw perfection. Inside, I felt suspicion taking deeper root. And it only intensified when the phone rang again, the screen displaying the county jail's number. The phone sliced through the silence shortly after midnight. I fumbled for it on the nightstand, and a sharp voice on the other end informed me. "Your brother has been rushed from the jail to the hospital." When I arrived, the fluorescent lights seemed especially harsh, buzzing over the sterile corridor. A nurse led me to the room. Darian lay on the bed, his skin pale. Bruises on his neck, dark and painful. I only saw the boy he used to be, reckless, but laughing, always dragging me into trouble. But then another image flashed before my eyes, the man who had cleaned out my accounts. His eyelids fluttered, opened slightly. "Selena," he rasped, each word seeming to tear at his throat. "You have to listen. Watch your boy." He was looking directly at me. I gripped the bed rail, trying to keep my balance. "You're weak. You need to rest." "No," he breathed out with unexpected force. "Roan." He knew everything before I even made a move. He knew. Cassandra said he scared her, like he could see right through her. The door creaked, and our mother, Abigail, hurried into the room. She clutched her purse to her chest like a shield, her eyes already glistening with tears. She was immediately at Darian's side, her trembling fingers smoothing his hair. "Don't start," she said sharply. "You betrayed us, Darian. Don't you dare drag Roan into your guilt. He's a good boy. The only good thing we have left." Darian's gaze locked onto mine. Desperate, pleading. "Please, just watch him." I nodded almost imperceptibly, though my throat was so tight I couldn't speak. Abigail gently tugged my arm. "Come on. He needs sleep, not more of his fantasies." We walked out into the night air, but Darian's voice haunted me. "Horse broken, watch your boy." It echoed all the way home, louder than the hum of the tires on the empty highway, and didn't stop even when I put the key in the lock, opening the door to the silent house that awaited us. We had returned from the hospital, and the house was deathly quiet. My nerves were stretched to the breaking point. I hadn't even taken off my coat when the phone rang again. The number was unfamiliar, but something inside me knew in advance. "Selena," a woman's voice hissed in my ear. Sharp and venomous. "This is Denise. Or maybe I should say Denise Voss. You think you're clever, huh? I know who tipped off the police. That was a setback. And if you don't want me to tell your brother the truth, you'd better." The phone was snatched from my hand before she could finish. Roan, suddenly beside me, pressed it to his ear. His voice was level, almost mocking. "If you actually knew something, you wouldn't be calling from a burner phone in the middle of the night. You'd be running. Which, by the way, is what you should do." A pause on the other end, then a muffled curse, and the line went dead. Roan handed the phone back to me. His face remained impassive. "She's bluffing, Mom. Scaring you is what con artists do best." I nodded, though my heart was still hammering. "How did you know it was her?" He shrugged, too easily, too casually. "Who else would call? Don't worry, she's got nothing." But for a moment, the briefest moment, before the mask slid back into place, I saw it. Something flickered in his eyes. Panic. Brief, not bright, just a flash, like lightning behind a storm cloud, and then it vanished, replaced by his usual calm and confidence. "See?" Roan smiled, already heading to the kitchen. "Everything's under control." I stood in the hallway. The phone was a heavy weight in my hand. Silence pressed in from all sides. Floorboards creaked upstairs. He was climbing the stairs. And I caught myself thinking, I don't know which is stronger, the comfort of those steps or the feeling that the walls have become thinner. The house was silent, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. I wandered around the kitchen, restless, unable to purge Denise's voice from my head. On the counter lay Roan's notebook, half hidden under a pile of mail. I pulled it out, thinking only to tidy up, but the page opened by itself. It wasn't homework. On the paper was a drawn chessboard, each piece rendered with a neat stroke. Pawns had already advanced across the board and been promoted to queens. The king, trapped in the corner, had no way out. A chill ran down my spine. "Find something interesting?" Roan's voice came from the doorway. He entered the kitchen, his bare feet so quiet on the tile that I jumped. His face was unreadable. I held up the notebook. "What does this mean?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "It's strategy, Mom. Endgame positions. Pawns aren't weak if they keep moving forward." Something glinted in his eyes. "Family is something you protect, not something you forgive." I put the notebook on the table, forcing myself to speak calmly. "Roan, you're 12. You shouldn't be carrying other people's sins on your shoulders. You need to talk to someone, a psychologist. There have to be boundaries." For the first time, his mask slipped slightly. He looked at me, and beneath his gaze, something hard flickered. But then the practiced smile was back on his face. "If that's what you want, sure, I'll go. I'll say whatever I need to." "That's not what I meant," I objected hastily. "I want you to be honest. I want you to feel like a kid again." His smile remained, but his words sounded like shards of glass. "I can be, Mom. As long as no one threatens us again." His calm tone squeezed my chest because I understood. It wasn't a promise. It was a condition. I gathered the notebook and shoved it into a drawer. My hands were shaking, while Roan calmly poured himself a glass of milk, as if nothing had happened. The silence was broken by the sound of the front door opening, and my mother's tired voice echoed in the hallway. The next morning, the house filled with the smell of pancakes. I walked barefoot into the kitchen and saw Roan at the stove. He was deftly flipping golden circles onto a plate, and my mother sat at the table, smiling as if nothing in our world had cracked. He looked like the most ordinary boy, bare feet, tousled hair, humming a slightly off-key tune. "Good morning, Mom," he said, sliding a plate toward me. "Coffee's ready." I forced a smile, but the night pressed heavily on my chest. At dawn, the hospital had called. Darian was asking for me. His voice was broken, pleading. Tell the truth about Roan. Please, Selena, before it's too late. I sat by his bed, listening to the same desperate plea he had whispered before. But looking at him, shattered, chained by his own actions, I realized exposing Roan wouldn't save him. It would only tear apart what little was left of our family. Returning home, I went upstairs with Roan's letter in my hands and placed it in the fireproof safe where I kept birth certificates and insurance papers. I slowly turned the key. The click of the lock sounded like a final verdict. The letter would remain hidden. So would the truth. When I got back to the kitchen, Roan was already at the table, handing his grandmother the syrup with a polite smile. His eyes met mine, calm, unreadable. And then he smiled widely. A childishly innocent smile, like any ordinary 12-year-old boy. I sat down across from him, and the taste of pancakes in my mouth turned to ash. I told myself that silence was protection. Even then, as unease was already growing inside me, what game would my son play next?